Today's story comes from this European country. Take a moment to look at the flag and see if you can work out which country it is. If you guess Sweden, then you are correct. Today's story is a story from Sweden, and it's called The Legend of St. Lawrence and the Giant Finn. Now, as I read the story, which is obviously a translation from Swedish, I want you to have a little think about whether or not this story sounds familiar. At the end, I'm going to ask you, what other story does this remind you of? In the town of Schönen, there is a large church which has never been fully built. This Swedish story explains why. When St. Lawrence came to the town, he wanted to build a church, but did not know how he was to obtain the means to do so. While he was racking his brains about it, a giant came to him and offered to build the church, on the condition that St. Lawrence tell him his name before the church was completed. But should St. Lawrence be unable to find out the giant's name, then the giant, in return, was to receive either the sun, the moon, or St. Lawrence's eyes. The saint agreed to this proposal. The building of the church made rapid progress, and before long it was nearly finished. St. Lawrence was worried, for he did not know the giant's name. Yet at the same time, he did not like the thought of losing the sun, the moon, or his eyes. And it happened that while he was walking around the town, much concerned about the outcome, he grew tired and weary, and he sat down on a hill to rest. As he sat there, he heard a child crying within the hill, and a woman's voice began to sing. "Sleep, sleep, my baby dear. Tomorrow your father, Finn, will be here. Then sun and moon you shall have from the skies to play with, or else St. Lawrence's eyes." When St. Lawrence heard this, he was happy, for now he knew the giant's name. He ran back quickly to town and went to the church. There sat the giant on the roof, just about to set the last stone in place, when at that very moment the saint called out, "Finn, Finn, take care how you put that stone in." The giant flung the stone at him, full of rage, shouting that the church should never be finished. And with that, the giant disappeared. From that day onwards, there's always been something missing about the church that has never been fully built. So have a think about that story. What familiar story does it remind you of? In this story, the giant Finn is trying to get St. Lawrence to learn his name in return for a favour. Can you think of another story where a character does a favour for someone else and will only free her from the favour if she can remember or find out his name? If you said Rumpelstiltskin, then you are correct. The story of Rumpelstiltskin is very familiar to this story. It's very similar, where Rumpelstiltskin does a favour for the princess and will only let her go or release his grip on her if she can find out what his name is. I've now got the story of Rumpelstiltskin to share with you as well. You may need this for a later task. Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a poor miller who had a daughter. He loved her very much and liked to boast about her. One day the miller bragged to the king that his daughter could spin straw into gold. The king was greedy and loved gold, so he asked for the miller's daughter to be brought to the palace. The king took the girl to a room that was full of straw and gave her a spinning wheel. "All this straw must be spun into gold by tomorrow morning, or I will have you killed." The girl began to cry because she didn't know what to do. Suddenly, a funny little man appeared. The little man offered to spin the straw into gold if she gave him her necklace in return. The girl gave him her necklace, and the little man spun all the straw into gold. The next morning, the king was delighted to see the gold, but he was a greedy man and wanted more. He took the miller's daughter into a larger room full of straw. All this straw must be spun into gold by tomorrow morning, or I will have you killed. Once again, the funny little man appeared. The little man offered to spin the straw into gold if she gave him her ring in return. The girl gave him her ring, and the little man span all the straw into gold. Again, the king was delighted to see the gold, but he was more greedy than ever and wanted more. He took the miller's daughter into an even larger room full of straw. All this straw must be spun into gold by tomorrow morning, or I will have you killed. The little man appeared, but the girl had nothing left to offer in return for his help. I will spin the straw into gold in return for a promise. If you ever become queen, you will give me your first child. The girl promised the little man to give him what he wanted, and he spun all the straw to gold. The next day the king was so happy he decided to marry the miller's daughter, and she became queen. A year later, the queen had her first child. She had forgotten all about her promise to the funny little man. Then one day, he suddenly appeared, and she was reminded. The queen begged for him to let her keep the child. The little man took pity on the queen. You have 3 days to guess my name. If you get it right, you can keep your child. The queen tried to guess his name, but failed. The little man disappeared, promising to return. Benjamin? Thomas? Stephen? Mike? Henry? Chris? Joseph? The next night, the little man appeared for the queen to try and guess his name again. The queen tried to guess his name again, but had no luck. The little man disappeared, promising to return. Scarface? Toothless? Badger Eye? Big Ears? Stink Rat? The queen was growing desperate, so the next morning she sent her serving boy out to find some more names. As the boy was walking through the forest, he overheard a funny little man singing to himself. Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, and after that the child I'll take. I'm the winner of the game, Rumpelstiltskin is my name. The boy returned to the queen and told her what he had heard in the woods. She was overjoyed. That night, when the little man appeared for the final time, she pretended to guess his name again. James, Jamal, Mario, Leo, Terry, Rumpelstiltskin. The little man was shocked and angry. He could not understand how the queen could have guessed his name. Rumpelstiltskin disappeared, never to be seen again, and the queen and king lived happily ever after. The end.